Israeli military launched airstrikes Tuesday evening on Gaza targets in response to earlier rocket salvos from the coastal strip. The death of a high-profile Palestinian prisoner in Israeli custody after a hunger strike of nearly 3 months set off a barrage of rockets from the Gaza Strip, raising fears of a further escalation. Israeli soldiers have been deployed with their tanks along the Gaza border. While the targets hit by Israeli fire are as of yet unclear, there was evident damage to a car and house in the southern Israeli city of Sderot from Palestinian rockets. Militant Palestinians accuse the Israelis of deliberately assassinating Khader Adnan by refusing him medical care while in their custody. Adnan, who was a senior figure in Islamic Jihad, had been charged with terrorism offenses. Israeli prison officials say he refused their medical help while he was on hunger strike. The fate of Palestinian prisoners in Israel is a top issue for their families and political leaders who hold Israel responsible for their well-being. There are said to be some 4,900 Palestinians in Israeli prisons.
Fighting appears to have intensified in Sudan's capital, with the sound of gunfire echoing across the city and thick black smoke billowing into the sky. A UN convoy says Sudan's warring generals have reportedly agreed to send representatives for negotiations, potentially in Saudi Arabia. The World Food Programme has lifted a temporary suspension of operations in Sudan as the fighting between rival military groups pushes millions into hunger. Food distribution is expected to begin again, but only in locations where humanitarian access is assured. There are warnings of a major humanitarian crisis in Sudan as people trapped by the fighting run out of food and fresh water. The UN is sending its top aid official to try and coordinate relief efforts. And while thousands of foreign nationals have been evacuated, tens of thousands of Sudanese try to cross any border they can reach. They're fleeing into neighboring countries, including Egypt, Chad, and the Central African Republic. The UN says it's bracing for the possibility of more than 800,000 people seeking safety.
Police in London arrested a man outside Buckingham Palace on Tuesday evening after he'd thrown suspected shotgun cartridges into palace grounds. A precautionary controlled explosion was carried out outside the palace, with the man held on suspicion of possessing an offensive weapon. After a search, a knife was found on him, but he did not have a gun. Police say the incident, which occurred just days before the coronation of King Charles III, was not being considered terror-related.
The shopping basket gives it away and Eurostat confirms it. Inflation rose again in the Eurozone in April. According to data announced on Tuesday by the European Union Statistical Office, the annual inflation rate increased by 0.1 of a percentage point compared to March, up to 7%. For yet another month, the lion's share of the price increase was borne by the food sector. Alcohol and tobacco did not help either. The so-called core inflation, which does not take into account energy, food, alcohol and tobacco prices, fell by 0.1 of a percentage point to 5.6%. The Eurostat figures are worse than was predicted by analysts who were betting on stagnation and are a further incentive for the European Central Bank to raise interest rates again at its meeting on Thursday.
The sad story of an Irish girl who took her own life in 2018 could still see a great achievement materialise in the fight against cyberbullying. Nicole Coco Fox hanged herself at the age of 21 after being abused physically and online for 3 years. Since then, her mother Jackie has been relentlessly campaigning to promote legislation that punishes bullying. In 2021, Ireland adopted the so-called Coco's Law, with up to 7 years in jail for those who distribute or publish intimate images of a person without their consent. Now Jackie's battle is being taken up at a European level.
The online abuse is so much more than the physical, much worse than the physical abuse, because once it gets inside your head, you know, your mental health is all messed up. It's so much harder to get it out of your head mentally online than physical abuse. That's from our experience. There's people in prison right now under Coco's law. There's 105 people up for prosecution, so many people under investigation. So I think it shouldn't be only in Ireland. If this law is working the way it is in Ireland, you know, why not bring it European-wide?
Other countries like France and Italy have already started tackling cyberbullying. But some MEPs, including Francis Fitzgerald from Ireland, would like to have a common EU framework.
Some other countries have partial legislation, but what we're saying now is we need comprehensive legislation right across Europe. We need a European law, European directive to ensure that we are dealing effectively with cyberbullying, because it leads to death.
The European People's Party says it will request a debate on cyberbullying during the next debating and voting session of MEPs, so that Jackie Fox can bring her daughter's story directly to them.
And I know somewhere where she is, she'd be saying, like, yup, Jackers, you know, go on, Mama Bear. And I know she'd be so proud of me, so as I'm as proud as I am of Nicole as well.
For Nicole's mother, her attempt to raise awareness on the topic of cyberbullying across Europe has only just begun.
Ukraine's top judo competitors have announced they'll boycott the World Championships starting in Qatar next week in protest over the participation of Russian and Belarusian athletes. On Sunday, the International Judo Federation said that they could compete as neutrals and not represent their countries.
Ми готувалися до цього, розуміли, що може така ситуація бути, але чекали, що все ж таки здоровий глузд в Міжнародній федерації переможе, але вийшло зовсім не так. 28 числа квітня, в останній день реєстрації, буквально там за 7-8 годин до кінця реєстрації, на сайті Міжнародної федерації вийшов такий меседж про те, що IJF допускає спортсменів з Росії і Білорусі до всіх своїх змагань в нейтральному статусі, так звані індивідуальні нейтральні атлети.
The IJF says an independent body will carry out background checks and monitor the athletes' social media accounts. Anyone found to be a supporter of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine will be excluded from the competition.
Alongside the difficulties of reporting the war, Ukrainian journalists are grappling with a new media law. The legislation expands the power of the national media regulator controlled by President Zelensky. In some cases, it can block access to online publications without a court hearing.
Ми можемо дуже обґрунтовано сумніватися в такій політичній навіть об'єктивності чи відстороненості цього органу, який, знову ж таки, отримав безпрецедентні з часів незалежності України повноваження в сфері регулювання медіа.
But as an EU candidate country, Ukraine must address media reform.
Together with the Council of Europe, we have provided recommendations to the draft law for that purpose. The Ukrainian authorities have taken many of them into account, notably on ensuring the independence of the media regulator, and we welcome this progress.
Supporters say the law provides transparency and tackles misinformation.
Some media aspects of the law still have to be addressed. Additionally, media freedom is an important underlying condition which Ukraine still has to address for the successful implementation of the law.
However, the Independent Union of Ukrainian Journalists is firmly against the law.
Тут була певна хитрість і певна така, певні такі маніпуляції. Перша маніпуляція – було проголошено, що цей закон дуже потрібен нам для євроінтеграції, для вступу в Європейський Союз. Маніпуляція була та, що до розробки законів запросили експертне коло з числа медіафахівців. Я ще раз кажу, не з числа, знову ж таки, професійної спільноти широкої, але було там досягнуто основних домовленостей з основними гравцями, медіа.
However, media watchdog Reporters Sans Frontières hails the measure as a step in the right direction.
Notre appréciation est globalement très positive parce que cela fait des années que cette réforme a été attendue et demandée par nous-mêmes. Elle va dans le sens d'harmonisation de la législation ukrainienne avec la loi européenne.
Despite the divide, some outlets are rapidly implementing the new measures.
We want to get registered to show sort of example to our colleagues from other online media outlets in Ukraine, and we see no problems with that.
The United States is sending an additional 1,500 troops to its border with Mexico in preparation for a surge in illegal immigration. COVID-19 border restrictions, which gave the US government the automatic power to expel undocumented migrants, come to an end later this month. President Biden, who has been criticized by some Democrats for toughening up border security, insists the deployment is meant to help with transportation and narcotics detection. The troops won't be involved in law enforcement. French football club Paris Saint-Germain has reportedly suspended Lionel Messi for 2 weeks without pay after the World Cup winner's unauthorized absence from training to travel to Saudi Arabia. The 35-year-old asked permission to make the journey to carry out commercial work, but was reportedly refused. Messi has a role as a tourism ambassador for Saudi Arabia. His 2-year contract with PSG expires this summer. He's now set to miss matches against Troyes and Ajaccio.